Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And when a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes terrifying spiritual forces. And yes, this is our raw reaction review of Talk to Me. Yes, it is finally time. Luke A24 has graced us with another horror film, and we love our A24 movies. Not just horror. We're a big fan of that company in general, but when they got a horror film in theaters, it's a special time. You know, all the weirdos, all the freaks and geeks, as I like to say, come out of their holes, and we go and enjoy what odd curiosity of terror they have conjured for us. And this one is even a little bit more special because this was produced and directed and written by a couple of brothers who have been making YouTube videos for quite some time, for actually since they were probably about like 10 years old, I think it was. They first started uploading, and they have the channel Raka Raka. And yeah, if you know them, they're pretty big. I know, Luke, you're not too familiar with the channel.
Not even slightly.
Yeah, but it was something that was like right around my age group. A lot of people my age will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say the Ronald McDonald videos. And yeah, no, they always had a really weird, sick sense of humor. And now they're getting to kind of translate that into a bit more of a serious, but also very sick and twisted, and might I say, fantastic horror film. Luke, how'd you feel about Talk to Me?
No surprise. I'm right there with you. Yes, you talk about A24 to start this, whereas A24 stuff generally attracts, a particular audience, I think, of what we know we're in store for. And some of that stuff doesn't really resonate 100% with a general audience. Now, looking at Talk to Me, I think this one, looking at the theater and where we were at, I mean, it wasn't sold out. It wasn't like a huge turnout. There were some people there. I think this is going to be a very much word of mouth kind of film, because I do think while this one does appeal to an A24 audience, I think this does have a great value toward a general audience as well. I think once a general audience does find this film, I think they will love it as well.
Yeah, and I think where this kind of sets itself apart from the usual A24 fare is that when you get into A24 horror, a lot of people like to think of, what this is getting compared to when it comes to things like Hereditary or The Witch or The Lighthouse. Some of these, and I would say Hereditary is a little bit more accessible than those. I'd even put Midsummer as a little bit more accessible, but they just border on the line of, okay, this is more going for that kind of art house. You got to really be into the whole cinema and creation of it to really appreciate everything on screen. And this definitely takes kind of the lesser approach to that. Like, it's gorgeous and it's definitely got some art house elements to it. These brothers show up and they definitely put their talents on display in that aspect, like you'd expect from an A24 project. But you're right, it does come off as a bit more accessible. It comes off with a bit more of like I don't even know how to say it, because it's like, without making it sound cheesy, but it's almost like a very open aesthetic, where it's like, this is a very modern, but not in the sense of like a Insidious modern. This is very much in that sense of like, this is what new age underground horror it's going to feel like. And I think that it very much leans on the sensibilities of its audience. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. And like looking at this film, whereas I totally understand what you're saying is, it resonates with a newer age audience, I think, especially with it just sitting with the cast in general. I think it's going to resonate with a younger audience, but there's great storytelling here. It's like, you look at that basic synopsis, it's not going to be something that really jumps out at you. It's like, meh, it seems by the book. But where this differentiates itself from, those films that kind of just are cookie cutter, is the great storytelling, is the tension that they bring here. and just the pure terror that is injected into Talk to Me, because this is something from the very opening, which I absolutely love the opening before we even get to the title screen. You're on board. It's like, as an audience member, you can't wait to see the rest of this film unfold. And in our short, I said there's a lot of gut punches in here. I think at the very beginning, when you don't even know exactly what's happening, there's a huge gut punch, and it continues to kind of pelt you with those lefts and those rights and those lefts and those rights all the way up until the credits.
Absolutely. I would say that it definitely does that. And I think that's where those comparisons to Hereditary really come in. Although I think that this film has a series of gut punches that are all very effective and they're all very well done. I think that the reason that I'm going to say that I wonder if that's kind of a misconstrued comparison is just because I think Hereditary's main gut punch, which I will not spoil, is that thing that really just sticks with you. And it's just that one big scene that they build that tension and then it really hits you, as opposed to, like you said, they just have these very consistent punches. And it's not necessarily the fact that like you get used to them. I was still very much like taken aback when they were doing things, but it is just one of those things where it's like you kind of you understand what you're dealing with a little bit more and just how visceral, and you grow to expect, okay, this thing's not fucking around. Like what they're messing with is going to do some pretty nasty shit, and it continues to. There's a lot of great setups and great payoffs in this movie as far as the entity, the gateway that they're dealing with in a sense here. And I think that one of the best moments for me in this film was actually from you, where I think we were probably about maybe 40 minutes into the film. There's one specific sequence that I'll dance around, but saying that it's the second or third time that the hand comes into play, and you just lean over to me and you're like, "This is just a genius concept," or something like that. You said you
Yeah.
love this concept, and I agree. I think that this is just so much fun. It's so unique, and there's just so much to play with. Everything from just them even describing that it's an embalmed hand, or even that it's like they don't really know what it is. That's just something that somebody said, and this thing's kind of getting passed around, and it just adds to that creep factor. And you never get the full blown, paint by numbers explanation of what this thing is. And it's like, that's not really a spoiler, but it is something that it's like, if that's what you're looking for out of this, then you should know by now that A24 and people who make horror movies for them, that's not really what they're here to tell. They're here to scare you, and they're here to tell a character piece. And that's essentially what this is. And I think that it does a really great job. So, where I would agree that the Hereditary comparisons come in, I do see this as potentially being A24's next flagship horror film whenever horror gets brought up in the A24 brand. I think that this is going to appeal to a lot of people.
Yeah. And in looking at this is, there are a lot of comparisons to Hereditary. Where I think this is different is you get to a point in Hereditary where it becomes very much an A24 audience. And, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like you get at a crossroads where a general audience is like, maybe this is a little too out in left field for me. And an A24 audience is like, okay, absolutely love it. Whereas Talk to Me, I think from beginning to end, I think is an A24 audience and also a general audience, where it's like they can have fun. A horror general audience can go in here, whether it's A24 or not, and have a lot of fun. And that's where it's like, I don't think they draw that line of where it's like you have to be on one side or the other. I don't think they were out to kind of, make an audience feel that they have to make that choice, So I think, again, where it differentiates itself is that great storytelling, is that great tension. And where we had talked about, they don't dive too deep into the lore of anything. Whereas we've talked about it in several videos where this over explanation with a lot of properties nowadays, where it's like, we've got to tell you every little bit of everything connected to this so I can wow you with my storytelling. Whereas this one, they don't harp on it. It's not something we're going to sit in this space and try to explain to you for a whole half hour of why this came to be. It's just a little talking point and we move on. And one of the things that I do love is they go to a character, as in almost any film, that is supposed to be the end all be all, the know all, the oracle, if you will, and tell us exactly what we have to do. And it's not treated that way. It's a very short thing. It's handled in a manner of, if this was the real world, it would go down exactly like that. And I absolutely love it because I think, again, these characters resonate with people. I think the situations resonate with people because they go down like they actually would in real life.
Absolutely. And, I got to give it to this cast. I think that there's a lot of bright spots in here. I sincerely want to highlight Sophie Wilde, who is our
Absolutely.
main character, Mia. She's wonderful in this. I thought that she had just this great, performance in the sense of her, physical performance when you see in the trailer that she does become possessed at a couple points, but also just giving a very emotional, very human performance as well. She's a very easy character to root for and feel for, and I thought that she came across beautifully. The other person that I want to highlight here is Joey Bird playing the character of Riley, who is the best friend's sister of Mia, or sorry, the sister's little brother. And you get this really unique and awesome relationship that, like, I can relate to somewhat, because my best friend growing up, he was very close to my family. He stayed at our house for weeks on end and things like that. So it's like him and my sister, they became kind of like that brother and sister archetype as well, and that's what you have here. And I think that it's a very kind and sweet relationship, and ultimately what they choose to do with that relationship and how they continue the story was just fantastic. You literally see the connective tissue naturally forming as the events play out. You never get too far ahead of it, and you never get lost. And I think that that's just wonderful storytelling. All in all, you really feel like you're on pace with the filmmakers, and that relationship especially was something that I absolutely adored. But I got to give props to everybody else in the cast. I could name everyone, but I just think that everybody here is really playing very strongly with each other. The only person that I could give a little bit of, critique to would probably be a couple of sequences with Marcus Johnson as Max, who is Mia's father. We just don't see him very much. And there's a
Mhm.
couple of scenes where he just kind of felt a little bit more like he was acting compared to everybody else in some of the earlier sequences we see him in. But he does have a very emotional scene later on in the film that I thought he did a really great job with. But it could just be the framing device of it. It could just be how it played out for me. But I still think he did a serviceable job. It was just a couple of those things where I was just like, okay, yeah, it kind of feels like you're a background actor. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, one I think maybe more so the adults in here kind of fell by the wayside because it wasn't really necessarily their story, but like going into it, and again, it goes back to the writing. The relationships feel real, where you try to inject some comedy into the film. I think it all feels natural. It feels real again, where sometimes that stuff can really stick out like a sore thumb and kind of take you out of it, saying, "Well, that was kind of a lame joke and it didn't really land." But there's a lot of stuff in here that will make you laugh, when that interplay with the teenagers is going on. And it kind of gets you lost in that moment. And when there is a real big trigger that is pulled throughout this, that kind of builds all that tension, and we watch that domino effect. I think, as prior to that event, you feel like one of the group. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
where they're in there, they're having the party, they're playing the game. And yes, they're dealing with real stakes here, but the way that it's handled feels just like a game. And then they pull you right back in when that trigger's pulled, and you're like, wait, they are really dealing with real stakes here. And going into, you mentioned Hereditary has a big moment, and we kind of fall into that moment with Talk to Me as well. It's one of those things where I'm laughing, I'm having a good time 1 minute, and then the next minute I'm tapping, saying, "Okay, I've had enough, no more, no more," and it's like, and then they bring it back a little bit later. And again, I find myself, okay, wait, hold on. There's a lot of tension here, and it's unsettling. So it's like they really play with your emotions here, and I think it goes back to just the great writing and the character building that they have.
Yeah, I really think they nail it. Jeff, definitely from a writing perspective. And then, yeah, I just think overall, these guys have a really great grasp on horror. I think that they have a really awesome sense of just like how to create a world and how to create, again, a very unique scenario. I would love to talk to these two and just get into their heads, especially on just like, how did you come up with this? What was the trigger for you? Like, what made you think an embalmed ceramic encased hand that you can speak to the dead with? Like, where does that come from? Because it's like, we sit here and we pitch ideas back and forth all the time, especially because we have our short film coming out and everything. So it's like we're going back and forth, and it's like, would you have ever thought of that? Like, did you, like, I don't know. It's just such a really cool, awesome idea, and I'm really happy to be living in a time where I get to see this on the big screen. I'm if you cannot tell, I'm very happy with my experience here. I'm very much considering going back this weekend to see this one again. And one of the things that I do want to kind of throw your way, if you got these vibes a little bit, I kind of picked up some Nightmare on Elm Street vibes from this.
As you say that, it's something where I think if anyone watches this review and then goes to the theater to see it, you're going to be able to pick those out. You know what I mean? Where it's
Yeah.
like there are some instances in here where you get really strong vibes, and I mean, the subject matter through the trailer, but as soon as you kind of hit those transition periods of the supernatural and what is going on, you definitely feel it, especially when you start seeing the undead walking around and characters
Hmm.
following them and things like that. It gives you that. I had a flashback to the original Nightmare on Elm Street where um, uh, they're walking down the hallway, and the bloody
Yeah, and
body bag and things like that. So, I mean, there are things that will give you those flashes of a Nightmare on Elm Street.
yeah, and that's really where I think like I saw the biggest influence just as a horror fan coming shining through. Just because again, the teenagers dealing with this situation, this kind of unforeseen entity that they're dealing with, and just how it plays out. It's very unique, very cool. But again, these guys really struck a chord, and I got to give them major props. I don't think I could recommend Talk to Me enough right now. This is definitely the best thing I've seen in theaters since Evil Dead Rise. I could say that easily right now. And yeah, I will definitely be picking this thing up, probably seeing it again in theaters. And you can bet your ass this is probably going to end up on at least the top 5 of the year for me.
Absolutely. And again, I'm seconding Dylan. This is a great experience. I had, going into last year, and Barbarian kind of came out of nowhere. And, we were absolutely surprised and happy with that film. Where this one, we were hearing a lot of great things. Weren't sure if it was going to live up to the hype, but I got to say, it more than lived up to the hype for me. I didn't know that I was going to like it as much as I did. I was hoping I was going to be positive on it, but I got to say, this one, they knocked this one out of the park. It's something where I definitely will go back to the theater to see it. I'm going to own it when it comes out. And this is a film where, when you watch something over and over again, you kind of get used to it. You get in that rhythm. You're like, nothing's going to surprise me. I think I'm always going to be a little unsettled by watching Talk to Me.
Alrighty, hell yeah. So I guess that's gonna wrap us up here, guys. That's everything we're gonna say about Talk to Me. Definitely go see this flick for sure. I think this is gonna be quite a bit of fun for any of you guys who are into horror, into supernatural stuff. Just in general, I think that most horror-loving audiences should go see this, no matter what kind of brand you like the most. I think that everybody will get a little piece out of it.
It's a unique, new, fresh horror
Hmm.
property in a world where we get, yeah, I mean, sequels, franchise, IP's great depending on what they do with it. But Talk to Me, it's new, it's out there, it's a great idea. I think it really hits home. And again, this is something that is so fresh, and I never would have thought of something like this. It almost, where I say Malignant is a film where it's so out in left field,
Yeah.
where you're either on board or you're not. Where this one, maybe not quite like that, but the idea behind this is so unique. It's something that, as a creator, as a writer, as someone who wants to be in the horror space, is going to teach you, don't think inside the box, think
Hmm.
outside the box, think some unique idea, establish some sort of lore that you don't really have to deep dive into it. Just something that is going to be a lot of fun for audiences and it's going to scare them.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, it's going to wrap us up here for our review of Talk to Me. Again, definitely check this puppy out this weekend. If you get the chance, let us know what you thought down below if you did go check it out, or if you are planning on it. What are your thoughts and anticipation going in? Do you like A24 horror? Is this going to take the cake as your favorite if you've already seen it, or is there just a couple more that edge that out? I would have to sit there and think on it for a little bit before I give you my definitive answer. But right now, while I'm sitting in the post-watch high, it's up there for me. But yeah, other than that, we got a lot of great stuff on the channel. We did just check out the Exorcist trailer, or the Exorcist Believer. And yeah, you guys seem to be responding pretty well to that. We talked for about 35 minutes going through that trailer, breaking it down, going through piece by piece, giving our thoughts. You know, definitely a little bit more trepidatious than with Talk to Me here. But yeah, we also have our trailer for Sycophant, which is the short film that we have been working on and is going to be releasing in the coming months, which we're very excited to share. We will have a link to the trailer down below, as well as on the channel if you just want to click right onto it. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap us up here. So until next time, I am Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Tedesco.
And remember, stay scared.